Good morning. It's my pleasure to welcome you, one and all, friends and members and guests and visitors. My name is Dick Fewkes. I'm a retired UU minister, and I do occasional pulpit supply. This is one of the places I do that and enjoy it very much. Always feel most welcome with this congregation. The intimate friendships that are here mean a lot to me. So now time for the lighting of our chalice. Richard is going to help light it for me. I share these thoughts about the meaning of this. May the light of truth illumine our minds. May the spark of love set our hearts on fire. May the flame of freedom and worship burn brightly within us, now and always. Blessed be. Okay, I have an invocation. Oh, okay, thank you.
So I got a couple of announcements, and I think that's one, maybe some other people. But one announcement is we're going to collect warm things for homeless people on the next 3 services. Back to the next service is Friday evening at 7:30, the Christian service. And the next service after that is not until January 8th. We're not having a Sunday service either on Christmas and New Year's. And then the third opportunity is Sunday, January 15th, and after those 3, we'll donate what we managed to collect from homeless people. We're looking to collect things that keep people warm, so hats, scarves, gloves, ribbons, and socks. and if you bring something to church, this used to be a hamper that I had. She's donating it to the church to be used. These are scarves that she made. She knits every evening for about 3 hours. 4 scarves here.
We're going to check the order of services and see if I have deleted announcements from the template because I didn't have it for a couple of weeks in a row. So thank you so much for traveling down. Nice to see you too, Connie. I hope you had a good trip down and so nice to see you. I've seen you a few months and no time of the day to be in your future as well. And I wanted to say that I remind you all what Richard just said, that we are not meeting next Sunday, but we are meeting Friday evening for our holiday service at 7:30, and that will be led by Ann Fox, and she would like to know if anyone would like to read. So I do have to run, I have an engagement right after church, but I am going to try to check in to see which group may like to read for that service. I think, and then again, we are not meeting until January after that.
Well, I'll give you your
Oh, he's going to read it. Thank you so much, Dave. Oh,
something else you want to say?
no. Thank you.
So, I'm going to excuse my I want to confirm that we are going to have a Martin Luther King Jr. Peace meal and peace readings on Martin Luther King Day, which is January 16th, Monday. So I would ask all of you to consider a peace meal, potluck kind of meal. I'll coordinate, or I'll probably impose on someone from the church, Diane or Kit, to assist in coordinating with the church's contributions and our revolution prayer forward, which means every second Thursday of the month, we are co-host they too will be making contributions to the event, and we could extend the warm sweater, scarves, coats, hats to that event as well. So after landing on Sunday the 15th, we'll, if agreeable, we'll close the collection on Martin Luther King Day. So please schedule yourselves for that evening. I expect that we'll be set up at about 5 o'clock, food set up at 5:30, and dinner at 6. If you have any questions,
Do you need help setting up?
what?
Do you need help setting up?
Yeah, we'll have to set up team at 5 o'clock. A food set up, our people that are bringing food, bring it at 5:30, and then 6 o'clock we'll have
And one other thing for the candlelight service.
It's a cigar.
One other thing for the candlelight service is years past, we've had a nice reception in back after the service, and we've all brought finger food, tea treats or something like that. So if you would consider bringing a dish for the candlelight service, if it's for next evening. Isn't it the
It's time to share some thoughts in the way of an invocation from the writings of the great Islamic mystic Jalaluddin Rumi. Here's what he had to say. Let us move beyond any attachment to names. Every war and every conflict between human beings has happened because of some disagreement about names. It's such an unnecessary foolishness because just beyond the arguing, there's a long table of companionship set and waiting for us to sit down. What is praised is one. So the praise is one, too. Many jugs being poured into a huge basin. All religions, all this singing, one song. The differences are just illusion and vanity. Sunlight looks slightly different on this wall than it does on that wall, and a lot different on this other one. But it's still one light. We have borrowed these clothes, these time and space personalities from a light. And when we praise, we pour them back in. Blessed be. Great words. People look east. Number 226, our opening hymn. Make your house where you are able to come and sit at the table. People of east for strength, the seed to nourish, land and flourish, flourish. Peace, the stars is on the way. Stars keep a watch, still one more light the world shall bring, shining beyond the frosty weather, and the sun and moon together. Oh, peace, today, oh, the star is on the way. Let us join together now in the affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church, number 471. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To truth without a way, and that all souls should grow. Amen. Let us turn to selection number 621 in your hymnal for responsive reading. This is from writings of Margaret Gooding. Why not a star? They told me that when Jesus was born, a star appeared in the heavens above the place where the young child lay. It was a wonderful miracle, part of a long ago story, foretelling an uncommon life. When I was older and believed in science and reason, I believed the story of the star explained. The star explained became the star understood for Jesus, for Buddha, for Zarathustra. Who knows what it may foretell? I invite you to enter into a spirit of meditation and prayer. Spirit of life and love, we come together knowing our human need of one another. We are none of us whole and complete in ourselves. We can complete and fulfill ourselves only in relation to other human beings. That is how we are made, fearfully and wonderfully made. This is something that amazes us at times, that fills us with joy and happiness at one moment, and in another moment turns to hurt or anger or disappointment. If this is love, dear God, it's sometimes bewildering, and we wonder what we are and why we do the things we do. Why do we sometimes hurt the ones we love, and why do the ones we love sometimes make us so darned angry? If we didn't care, it wouldn't matter. But we do care. And our friends and our loved ones do matter. And we know that people are precious. We long to know ourselves more deeply, understand one another more fully, be more tolerant and forgiving of our human imperfections, be honest with our feelings, good feelings and bad feelings, and to be able to express them without fear of rejection, and to be able to laugh at ourselves more readily because we're able to accept our humanness and the humanness of others. So we pray this day that this religious community right here in Fall River will help us in our lifelong task to become fully human, to become whole and loving and free within ourselves and in relation to all those whose lives are bound up with ours in a common destiny. So may it be. Blessed be. Hymn Within the Shining of the Star, number 238. Oh. Catch a glimpse of who we are. Every from morn we see the hope of our nativity. Call each new birth and shake and save the stony earth. Triumphantly, the newborn's cry shall echo from the waiting sky. A Christmas Carol for the Poor, or to pluralize it as it says something, Christmas carols, plural, for the poor. I originally preached this sermon on my birthday, way back in December 11, 1994. And I haven't repeated it since. But the topic is perennial. Every Christmas. Oh gosh, that story just the different actors and actresses play roles. We still are captured, amazed by this story about the Christmas Carol. Well, the original story was came into being in 1843, written, as you know, by Charles Dickens, that famous British Unitarian writer, who at the time was faced with a series of mounting debts. Christmas was approaching, and he needed to make some money to pay off his creditors, feed his family, and enjoy the festive season, which was dear to his heart. Well, inspiration fortunately came, and in a great creative outpouring in a matter of days, a ghost story of Christmas, known as A Christmas Carol, came forth from his soul. And the story and its characters literally wrote themselves through him. He was their mere instrument as they took on life through his hand and his heart and his brain. He laughed and he cried as the story unfolded. Well, in the preface to the story, Dickens made this brief statement. I have endeavored in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea, which shall not put my readers out of humor with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to put it away. Your faithful friend and servant, C.D. Charles Dickens. Well, friends, haunt their houses pleasantly, it did indeed. And still doing so, still does so, nearly 180 years later. Dickens was already an established writer at the time he wrote A Christmas Carol. This one, the dearest and the favorite of all his writings, brought him, you might say, eternal fame. And it has become a classic of English literature, which has won its way into the hearts of millions the world around. Young and old alike are moved to feelings of tragic pity for the figure of Ebenezer Scrooge, the quintessential skinflint, a man so enslaved by greed that he couldn't be touched by feelings of kindness or compassion toward the poor, toward the oppressed, nor even allow himself to express even a simple act of generosity. Dickens' story was an immediate success and won him accolades of praise from critics and fellow authors. You've done some more good, exclaimed critic Francis Jeffrey, by this little publication than can be traced to all the pulpits and confessionals in Christendom since Christmas 1842. In short, a year's worth of sermons. And people listened to a lot of sermons in those days. Hour-long nap catchers, twice on Sundays. Perhaps Francis Jeffrey was damning Dickens with faint praise by comparing his charming tale to a year's worth of sermons. In any event, proceeds from the sales of the book rescued Dickens from mounting debts and brought him a very merry Christmas in the bargain. By writing a story about the evils of greed, Dickens made himself a lot of money. There's a lesson to be learned here. Maybe by preaching a sermon on the same topic, maybe I'm going to become duly recompensed. Well, someone gave me a check when I came in the door. And if you feel so inclined, we'll take up a second collection at the end of the homily. Kidding, of course. I have noted, Dickens said, and endeavored in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea. And what was that ghost of an idea? To promote the virtues of generosity and philanthropy of spirit, characteristic of the Christmas spirit of giving. Certainly, but the ghost of the idea went deeper than that. To those who had ears to hear, Dickens' Christmas Carol was the voice of a prophet speaking out against the evils of an economic system which exploited the masses of the poor and sent the destitute to debtor's prison and the workhouse. As a professor of English, Edgar Johnson noted, the story was an attack on the business rapacity that was making 19th century England into a wasteland of satanic mills and industrial slums, and the blast against the rationalization of the political economists who defended this heartless system. Dickens' voice can be likened to that of the ancient prophet Isaiah, who urged his countrymen to share their bread with the hungry and to bring the homeless poor into their houses of opportunity. Isaiah 58, verse 7. Dickens had experienced the scourge of poverty in his own life. So he knew whereof he spoke. When he was a boy, his family was forced to move to the slums, and his father was sent to debtor's prison. And Charles had to work long hours pasting labels on bottles of shoe blacking to provide family income. And thinking of those hard times in his later years, Dickens said, "No words can express the secret agony of my soul." He had known poverty firsthand, and he knew its dehumanizing and degrading effects upon the human body and spirit. In Dickens' story, Scrooge is what you might call the personification of the economic man, who decrees the life of workers according to cold, impersonal, iron law of wages, which keeps them poor and in bondage, and barely above the level of subsistence. You must remember, friends, that this was an economic system in which the poor were severely neglected, denied an education, given no protection from greedy employers, where children work for slave wages with their parents, forcing them to live in filthy hovels, allowing misery to goad them into crime, and then punishing them ferociously. Dickens' protest against that awful system was summed up by Professor Johnson in the following words: "Cold-hearted arrogance and injustice, storing up a dangerous heritage of ignorance, poverty, and rebellion. Such is or was Dickens' judgment of the economic system that Scrooge exemplified." And he goes on, "and making himself into an economic machine and degrading his victims into snarling and ferocious beasts, Scrooge accomplished the dehumanization of humanity." Well, Dickens' ghost of an idea was meant to haunt his readers pleasantly, but haunt them he meant to do, and to move them to change the order of things towards justice and righteousness, to remove the face of ignorance and want from the land. And Dickens wrote with such charm and grace that he still haunts us every year, and will, God knows, forever. His ghost of an idea still speaks, still touches, still moves us with the power of 1,000 sermons. Now, Dickens' social conscience became, you might say, individualized in concrete fictional characters, and it was brought home to the domestic sphere of his time and place. The poor as a class are too abstract to comprehend, but seen in the context of a struggling family, Bob Cratchit and Tiny Tim and company, they became real to the people of Dickens' day and our own. But Bob Cratchit, we should remember, was not the poorest of the poor, though he struggled to make ends meet and to pay his bills. But he never knew when he might lose his job. As characters, they're you might say, a bit over-romanticized. The poor are not all of them lovable or utterly innocent and without guile, but then neither are we, nor anybody else, for that matter. But the poor are no less worthy of love and no less capable of compassion, generosity, and goodwill than other human beings. To see the humanity of the other in all of its beauty and homeliness, to see it and to find it worthy of divine love and human compassion, this was Dickens' genius. And he brought it to life again and again in the art of his literary craft. Nearly 180 years have passed since Charles Dickens wrote his Christmas Carol for the poor of England. And though much progress has been made and conditions have changed for the better in England and America, and perhaps around the globe, still his ghost of an idea haunts the conscience of our day, because the face of ignorance and want have not been blotted out. On a global scale, it is still gargantuan in its dimensions, and while it is much less of an aspect than it was a century and 3/4 ago, it's still very much with us. When I gave this sermon back in 1994, midterm elections had been held only weeks before, in November. And as some of you may remember, Newt Gingrich was the new Speaker of the House at that time. And he suggested some radical changes in the welfare system. Just like today, there are those in Congress and elsewhere who would like to get rid of the whole Social Security system. Dump it. We're not deserving of it. Get rid of Social Security itself. Well, dear friends, history might be repeating itself with a possible new House Speaker in the person of Kevin McCarthy. We may yet be treated to a new McCarthyism. My God, you remember the old Joe McCarthyism? How about the new Kevin McCarthyism? And maybe they come up with a new slogan. Yes, we Kevin. Well, will the Dems cave in to Kevin? We shall see. Whether fairly or unfairly at that time, some characterized the House Speaker as the Gingrich who stole Christmas. I love that. It was beautiful. Thank God. Another columnist, Martha May, writing in the Globe, suggested that rewriting Dickens' Christmas Carol featuring Gingrich as the new Scrooge, visited by ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, and beginning with the first ghost as Jane Addams. She was a social reformer in Chicago, founded the whole settlement house there. And, tongue in cheek. Anyway, in all fairness to whomever becomes the future Speaker of the House, whoever it might be, he or she and we are going to have to come to terms with additional burdens that they say didn't have back in 1843, with COVID flu epidemics, both here and abroad, with violence and guns in public schoolrooms, and God knows what else. Or the latest war machine coming out of Russia. The world has continuing conflicts, and the welfare system certainly needs to be reformed and revamped and overhauled, always has and probably always will. But whatever we do, we had better come up with something other than Scrooge's interrogatives. Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? Are there no orphanages? Remember that? Surely we can do better than that. We could do with a little bit of organized collective compassion and increase the level of our generosity through UU churches and other churches with their outreach, organizations like the UU Service Committee or the UU Urban Ministry in Boston. And maybe you got something similar to that around here in Fall River. I suspect, as Jesus once said, that the poor will always be with us, whatever economic system or arrangement we devise. But we also have an obligation, both personal and social, as Jesus and the prophets so ably taught, to feed the hungry, to liberate the oppressed, to release the captives, to preach good news to the poor. It is an obligation, you might say, of both church and state, religion and politics, the individual and the nation. May this ghost of an idea take flesh again in our hearts and hands and voices. Yes, let us be about the business of charity, mercy, forbearance, the common welfare. Let us go forth while it is day and turn as we are able human misery into joy. Let us honor Christmas in our hearts and keep it all the year. God bless us, everyone. Let us now sing together a Christmas carol for the poor and the downtrodden. Number 244, it came upon the midnight clear. And of all the Christmas carols ever written, it has the clearest social conscience and was written by a Unitarian. Let us take heed to its sentiment and its words. Upon Beneath the angels' strength have roamed 1,000 years of wrong, and we who fight the wars hear not the love song which they bring. Hush the noise of battle strife, and hear the angels sing. For all the days are hastening on, thy prophet was foretold. When with the ever circling years comes from the age of gold, when peace shall over all the earth its ancient splendor sing. When the whole world give back the song which now the angels sing. Need to do joys and concerns now. Oh, okay, good. Okay. We're going to take time now for doing our sharing of joys and concerns. Okay, good.
So, I got a call this morning from a strange silence. This is criminal from his granddaughter has necrotizing tarot arthritis. And was going to get surgery at this moment. So we asked for a blessing, your prayers for her and one more. And she was one of two twins, one of them died. And I figured and this one was kind of difficulty. Survived so well. She's had a hard time, so you can be encouraged.
So I have joy. Is this correct? So, my mother was 98 and had a heart attack earlier this year. I'm happy to report she's doing great. In fact, she's doing so well, she's driving my brother absolutely crazy. Trying to get ready for Christmas and this and hang the lights. No, you're not right. But, I'm going down tomorrow to visit with my sister, co-wife, and spend the day and listen to Christmas music and finish up the decorations just right. And so it's just a joy that I still have my mother and I get to enjoy mother.
A couple, I guess that's work. Okay, a couple of joys here. Friday, Steve had been urging us to go to it's a monthly organ concert, I guess, at First Congregational Church right up the hill here. And we went yesterday, and it was quite fantastic, actually. So thank you, Steve. There was a terrific organ, a trumpeter that sounded like Gabriel performing. He was good, and it was just wonderful. Now the other joy is a shout out. Last night, the Buffalo Bills played a football game up in Buffalo, and the fans had to be warned by the referee not to throw any more snowballs at the Miami team. My people.
We had a joy, we found out at the end of last week that our granddaughter in Texas is expecting our second great granddaughter. She was due in March, so we're sure to stay healthy and have a healthy baby. We don't know what it is yet. And our concern is Eric's friend at work, their buddies, fell at work and broke her shoulder. So she is seeking orthopedist next week and is probably facing surgery. She'll be out of work for about 2 weeks. So if you could remember her your thoughts and send her some positive feeling her way, she would appreciate it. Oh, and Eric's going to say his daughter being a brother.
And now announce the offertory, and then we'll have your closing words after.
You were invited to share in the offering for the financial support of this congregation. The words of Howard Thurman, the work of Christmas. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and the princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among the brothers and the sisters, to make music in the heart. Blessed be.